My son said, "Don't dare come to our wedding. My wife doesn't want to see you." I just smiled. He didn't know that the house they live in is mine. That evening, I knocked on their door and said, "I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled." I never thought my own son would become a stranger to me. For 63 years, I had lived my life with dignity, worked hard, raised Michael as a single mother after his father passed away when he was only 7. I had given him everything: education, love, a roof over his head. I had bought this modest 2-story house in suburban Portland 15 years ago, thinking it would be my retirement haven. Life before the incident was simple. I worked as a librarian until I retired at 60, then spent my days gardening, reading, and volunteering at the local community center. Michael had always been a good boy, or so I thought. He called regularly, visited on holidays, and I believed we had the kind of relationship every mother dreams of. Then he met Sandra. At first, I was happy for him. My 40-year-old son had finally found someone. Sandra was 32, attractive, with a sharp smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But who was I to judge? I wanted Michael to be happy. They dated for 8 months before he proposed, and I supported them wholeheartedly. The first troubling sign came 6 months ago. Michael called me, his voice unusually tense. "Mom, Sandra and I are looking for a place to live. The rent in the city is killing us. You have that house with 2 floors. Would you mind if we stayed with you temporarily? Just until we get on our feet." How could I say no to my own son? They moved into the upstairs floor of my house. I gave them complete privacy, their own entrance, their own kitchen, everything. I thought it would be nice to have family close by. I was wrong. The changes started subtly. Sandra would pass me in the hallway without greeting. When I tried to make conversation, she would give me tight-lipped smiles and excuse herself. Michael started avoiding my eyes. They would have loud conversations upstairs, and sometimes I would hear my name mentioned, followed by Sandra's sharp laughter. Then came the suggestions. Sandra started commenting on my habits. "Don't you think it's time to update this old kitchen?" she would say, running her finger along my countertop with distaste. "And maybe you should consider a retirement home. You're not getting any younger." I bit my tongue. This was temporary, I told myself. They would move out soon, but they didn't move out. Instead, they started acting like they owned the place. Sandra rearranged my living room furniture without asking. Michael stopped contributing to groceries, saying they were family and shouldn't have to pay. When I gently brought up the topic of them finding their own place, Sandra's face would darken, and Michael would snap at me about being selfish and not supportive. The breaking point came 3 weeks before their wedding. I was coming home from the grocery store when I heard them arguing upstairs. The window was open, and their voices carried down clearly. "I can't stand living under the same roof as her anymore." Sandra's voice was venomous. "She's always watching us, judging everything I do. This is supposed to be our home." "I know, baby, I know," Michael soothed her. "After the wedding, we'll figure something out." "Figure something out?" Sandra laughed bitterly. "Michael, she's not going to leave on her own. We need to make her understand she's not welcome here anymore." My hands trembled as I held the grocery bags. My own son. My own flesh and blood. The next day, I went to check my mailbox and found Michael waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. His face was cold, distant, a stranger wearing my son's features. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" He took a deep breath. "Sandra and I have decided. We don't want you at our wedding." The world tilted. "What?" "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his voice hardening. Sandra doesn't feel comfortable with you there. You've been difficult, critical. She doesn't want that negative energy on our special day. Michael, I've never said a word against. Don't! His voice rose, and I stepped back. Don't come to our wedding. Sandra doesn't want to see you there. Stay away from us. Do you understand? I stared at my son, this man I had sacrificed everything for, and slowly I smiled. He didn't know. Neither of them knew. This house, the one they'd been treating as their own, the one they wanted to push me out of, it was mine. My name was on the deed. I had bought it with my own money, my own savings, and that evening, I was going to remind them of that fact. I spent that afternoon sitting in my small downstairs study, the room Michael and Sandra never entered because they considered it cluttered and depressing. My hands shook as I held my cup of tea, watching the liquid ripple with each tremor. What had I done wrong? I replayed every interaction, every conversation, searching for the moment when I had lost my son. Had I been too critical? Too present? Or had I simply been too trusting, too willing to open my home to people who saw me as an obstacle rather than family? The fear came in waves. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. This was about my home, my safety, my future. If they felt comfortable enough to disinvite me from the wedding, what would they do next? Would they try to force me out entirely? Would Sandra convince Michael to put me in a nursing home? I thought about my late husband, James. What would he say if he could see his son now? James had been a proud man, a veteran, someone who believed in standing up for yourself with dignity and intelligence. Margaret, he used to tell me, the best revenge is not getting mad, it's getting smart. I pulled out my filing cabinet and found the folder I was looking for. Property documents. There it was, in black and white. The deed to this house, purchased in 2010, registered solely under my name. Margaret Ellen Thompson. No joint ownership, no shared title. Mine. But ownership alone wouldn't solve this problem. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I needed to know exactly what Sandra and Michael were planning. That evening, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them emotionally. I wouldn't beg or plead or try to appeal to Michael's memories of his childhood. People like Sandra, people who could manipulate my son into treating his own mother this way, didn't respond to sentiment. They responded to power. And right now, I held all the power. I just needed to use it correctly. My first step was documentation. I went to my computer and created a detailed log. I wrote down every incident. The date Sandra had moved my furniture, the conversations where they'd discussed making me leave, the grocery bills I'd been paying while they contributed nothing. I noted the rent they hadn't paid, not a single dollar in 6 months. Then I did something that felt both calculating and necessary. I called my lawyer, Patricia Morrison. We had been friends for 20 years, ever since we met at a book club meeting. Patricia, I need legal advice, I said, keeping my voice low. Hypothetically, if someone were living in my house without a lease agreement and I wanted them to leave, what would be my options? There was a pause. Margaret, is everything all right? Just answer the question, please. Patricia's tone became professional. Without a written lease, they would be considered tenants at will in Oregon. You would need to give them 30 days written notice to vacate. If they refuse, you can file for eviction. But Margaret, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Margaret, wait, is this about Michael? I closed my eyes. Yes. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Do you want to meet tomorrow? We should discuss this properly. Yes, tomorrow morning. But Patricia, not a word to anyone. Please. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my study. 30 days' notice. It seemed both too long and too short. Could I survive 30 more days of their cold shoulders and subtle hostilities? Could I continue living in my own home while being treated like an unwelcome guest? But I had to be strategic. If I moved too quickly, too emotionally, I could make mistakes. Sandra struck me as the type who would twist any confrontation to her advantage, who would paint me as the villain in whatever story she told to friends and family. No, I needed to be smarter than that. I needed evidence, I needed witnesses, and I needed to protect myself legally and financially. The thought of going to war with my own son made my chest ache. But what choice did I have? He had already declared war on me. I was just finally acknowledging it. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards above me sounded like a threat. But by morning, my fear had crystallized into something harder, something more useful: determination. I was Margaret Ellen Thompson. I had survived my husband's death, raised a child alone, built a career, and bought this house with my own hard-earned money. I wasn't going to be driven out by anyone, not even my own son. The war had begun, and I intended to win. The next morning, I met Patricia at her office downtown. The building was one of those modern glass structures that reflected the gray Portland sky, making everything look cold and official. Perfect for what I needed to do. Patricia's office was warm, though, filled with books and photographs of her grandchildren. She poured me coffee and sat across from me, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. I told her about Sandra's arrival, the gradual takeover of my home, the overheard conversations, and finally, Michael's cruel dismissal from the wedding. Patricia listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and sighed. "Margaret, I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be painful. Evicting your own son." "He's already evicted me from his life," I said quietly. "I'm just making it official." Patricia nodded slowly. "All right. Here's what we need to do. First, I'll draft a formal 30-day notice to vacate. It needs to be delivered properly. Certified mail, return receipt requested. Second, we need to document everything from this point forward. Every interaction, every conversation. If this goes to court, we need to show you acted reasonably and legally. What are the chances they'll leave quietly?" Patricia's expression was answer enough. "Based on what you've told me? Slim. They seem to think they have a right to your property. Sandra especially sounds like someone who won't give up easily." "When is the wedding?" 3 weeks from now." "Then we time this carefully. We'll serve the notice this week. That gives them 30 days, which means they'll need to be out about a week after the wedding. The timing might work in our favor. They'll be focused on the wedding, possibly more distracted." I left Patricia's office with a manila envelope containing the official notice. My hands were steady as I held it, though my heart was racing. This was it. The point of no return. That evening, I waited until I heard them come home from work. I climbed the stairs to their floor, my floor, I reminded myself, and knocked on the door. Sandra answered, her face immediately contorting with annoyance. "What do you want?" "I need to speak with both of you. It's important." "Michael's busy," she said, starting to close the door. I put my hand against it. "This is legal business. I suggest you listen." Something in my tone made her pause. She called over her shoulder, "Michael, your mother's here." He appeared behind her, his face weary. "Mom, we're not discussing the wedding. The decision is final." Quote. "This isn't about the wedding," I said calmly. I pulled out the envelope and held it out. This is a formal 30-day notice to vacate the premises." The silence that followed was deafening. Sandra's face went from annoyed to shocked to furious in the span of seconds. "Excuse me? What did you just say?" "You have 30 days to find alternative housing and move out. This is my house, my property. I've been more than generous allowing you to live here rent-free, but that arrangement is now terminated." Michael snatched the envelope from my hand, tearing it open. His face went white as he read the legal document. "Mom, you can't be serious. This is our home." "No," I said, and my voice was steel. "This is my home. It has always been my home. Your name is not on the deed. You have no lease. You are tenants at will, and I am exercising my legal right to terminate your tenancy." "You vindictive old—" Sandra started forward, but Michael grabbed her arm. "Why are you doing this?" Michael's voice cracked. "Because we didn't invite you to the wedding? This is insane." "This is business," I said. "You made it clear I'm not welcome in your life. I'm simply reciprocating. You're not welcome in my home." "We have nowhere to go," Sandra shrieked. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. Do you know how much stress we're under?" I looked at her coldly. "You should have thought of that before you decided to treat me like an intruder in my own house. You have 30 days. I suggest you start looking for apartments." I turned and walked down the stairs, my legs shaking, but my posture straight. Behind me, I could hear Sandra's furious tirade and Michael's shocked protests. That night, they hammered on my door for hours. Sandra screamed that I was a bitter old witch who was destroying her life. Michael begged me to reconsider, his voice alternating between anger and pleading. I sat in my study with the door locked, noise-canceling headphones on, and didn't respond to a single knock. The war was officially declared, and I had just fired the first shot. The next 3 days were hell. Sandra and Michael alternated between ignoring me completely and launching verbal ambushes whenever I ventured out of my downstairs sanctuary. They blocked my car in the driveway. They played loud music at night. Sandra, accidentally, knocked over my potted plants on the porch. But I had prepared for this. Every incident went into my documentation log, complete with timestamps and photographs. Patricia had warned me they would escalate before they accepted reality, and she was right. On the 4th day, I took my next step. I called a locksmith. "I need the locks changed on my property," I told him over the phone. "But only on the lower floor, my private entrance. The upstairs unit has its own separate entrance." He arrived that afternoon while Michael and Sandra were at work. Within 2 hours, I had new deadbolts on every door that connected the lower floor to the upper floor, as well as my main entrance. I was effectively sealing off my portion of the house. When they came home that evening and tried to use the interior staircase that had previously connected our living spaces, they found it locked. The pounding started immediately. "Open this door!" Sandra screamed. "You can't lock us in!" I opened the door but left the chain latched, so only a crack showed. "You have your own entrance. Use it. My living space is no longer accessible to you." "This is illegal!" Sandra's face was purple with rage. "You can't change the locks while we're still living here." "I changed the locks to my portion of the house. You still have full access to your portion, which is the upstairs unit with its own entrance. I'm not restricting your access to the space you're renting. I'm restricting your access to my private space. It's perfectly legal. Check with a lawyer if you don't believe me." Michael appeared behind Sandra, and for a moment, I saw something like desperation in his eyes. "Mom, please, can we talk about this reasonably? I gave you a legal notice. There's nothing more to discuss." That weekend, things got worse. Saturday morning, I found my car had been keyed. Long, deliberate scratches ran along both sides. I called the police and filed a report, then took photographs for my records. The officer who responded was sympathetic, but said, Without proof of who did it, there was little they could do. "Do you have security cameras?" he asked. I didn't, but I would by the end of the day. I installed 2 small cameras, one covering my front entrance and car, another covering the back door. Both uploaded footage to cloud storage automatically. Patricia had suggested this, and I was grateful for her foresight. Sunday afternoon, Michael came to my door alone. He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept. For a moment, he looked like my son again, the boy I had raised, not this stranger who had turned against me. "Mom," he said quietly, "please. Sandra is 8 weeks pregnant. We just found out. We can't move while she's dealing with morning sickness and wedding stress. Can't you give us more time? Please?" The news hit me like a physical blow. A grandchild. I was going to have a grandchild, and I was fighting with the child's parents. But then I remembered Patricia's words. They will use every emotional weapon they have, every manipulation. You have to stay strong. I looked at my son and hardened my heart. Congratulations on the pregnancy. But my decision stands. 30 days. You knew this was my house. You chose to treat me with cruelty anyway. Actions have consequences, Michael. She'll hate you forever for this, he said, his voice breaking. Our child will never know their grandmother. Perhaps you should have thought of that before you told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding, before you let your wife treat me like garbage in my own home. He stared at me, and I saw the moment he gave up trying to appeal to my emotions. His face hardened. Fine. You want to play it this way? We'll get a lawyer, too. We'll sue you for illegal eviction. We'll drag you through court and make you look like the monster you're being. I've done everything by the book, I said calmly. My lawyer assures me I'm within my rights. But if you want to waste money on lawyers, that's your choice. You have 26 days left. I closed the door. That night, I allowed myself to cry for the first time. I cried for my son, for the grandchild I might never meet, for the family I had lost. But when my tears dried, my resolve remained. I took 3 days to rest, to let the emotional exhaustion fade. I didn't leave my house. I ordered groceries online. I needed to recharge before the next battle, because I knew Sandra wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The calm before the storm lasted exactly 3 days. On Wednesday evening, there was a soft knock on my door. Not Sandra's aggressive pounding or Michael's desperate hammering. This was gentle, almost apologetic. I checked my new security camera feed on my phone before answering. Michael stood alone, holding something in his hands. He looked tired and sad, nothing like the angry man who had threatened to sue me. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Mom," he said softly, "I brought you something." He held out a small photo album, one I recognized immediately. It was the album I had made for his 10th birthday, filled with pictures of the two of us from when he was a baby through childhood. My throat tightened. "I was looking through old boxes and found this," he continued, his voice gentle. "I'd forgotten about that trip to the coast, remember? You saved up for 6 months so we could spend a week there. I found my first sand dollar that trip." I remembered. Of course I remembered. Every sacrifice, every saved penny, every moment of his childhood was etched in my memory. "I've been thinking," Michael said, stepping closer. "Maybe we all overreacted. You, me, Sandra. This has gotten out of control. What if we started over? You withdraw the eviction notice, we pay you rent going forward, and we all try to be a family again. Please, Mom. For the baby. Don't you want to be a grandmother?" It was so tempting. God, it was tempting. To have my son back, to be part of my grandchild's life, to believe that everything could return to normal. But I had learned something important over the past 2 weeks. Normal was gone. It had been gone the moment Sandra decided I was an obstacle, the moment Michael chose his wife over basic decency to his mother. You can't go back to a normal that never existed. "Michael," I said quietly, "do you remember what you said to me? Don't come to the wedding. Sandra doesn't want to see you there." Those were your exact words. He flinched. I was angry. I shouldn't have. "Has Sandra apologized?" Silence. "Has she asked you to come here and make peace? Or did you come alone?" More silence. He looked down. "I thought so," I said. "Michael, I love you. I always will. But I won't be manipulated. If you truly want to repair our relationship, it starts with respect. It starts with Sandra acknowledging how she's treated me. It starts with genuine change, not desperate attempts to avoid moving out." "She won't apologize," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "She says you're the one who should apologize for destroying our lives." I took the photo album from his hands gently. "Then we have nothing more to discuss. 23 days, Michael. I suggest you start packing." He left without another word, his shoulders slumped in defeat. After he was gone, I stood holding that album, memories washing over me. But I didn't cry this time. I had made my choice, and I would see it through. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went to my book club meeting. These were my friends, women I had known for decades. I needed normalcy, needed to remember that I had a life beyond this nightmare. Patricia was there, of course, and so were Linda, Joyce, and Barbara. They took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. Over coffee and scones, I told them everything. "I can't believe Michael would do this to you," Barbara said, her face flushed with anger. "After everything you did for him." "Sandra sounds like a manipulative nightmare," Linda added. "I've seen women like her before. They isolate their partners from family, then take over completely." "You're doing the right thing," Joyce said firmly. "It's your house, your property. You don't owe them anything." Patricia squeezed my hand. "Margaret's been incredibly strong through all this, and she's handled everything legally and correctly. I'm proud of her." Their support meant more than I could express. I had been so isolated in my own home, so focused on the battle, that I'd forgotten I wasn't alone. I had friends. I had allies. I had people who saw the situation clearly and supported my decisions. "What happens if they don't leave in 30 days? Barbara asked. "Then we file for eviction in court," Patricia said. "It's a straightforward case. Margaret has documentation, she followed proper procedure, and they have no legal grounds to stay. It might take another 30 days for the court process, but eventually, the sheriff will remove them if necessary." The thought of it coming to that made me sick. But I also felt a strange sense of peace. I had done everything right. I had tried to be kind, to be family, to be generous. They had thrown it back in my face. Whatever happened next was on them, not me. As I drove home that afternoon, I felt stronger than I had in weeks. I wasn't just fighting for my house anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my self-respect, and my right to be treated with basic human decency. And I wasn't fighting alone. The knock came on Saturday morning. 2 weeks exactly since I had served them the eviction notice. 16 days remained. I checked my camera and saw both of them standing at my door. Michael looked uncomfortable, but Sandra was smiling. That smile made my blood run cold. "Margaret," Sandra called through the door, her voice sweet as honey. "We brought bagels and coffee. Can we talk, please? Just a conversation between family." Every instinct told me not to open that door. But I was curious. What angle were they working now? I opened it, leaving the security chain latched. "What do you want?" "We want to make peace," Sandra said, still smiling that cold smile. "We've been thinking about everything that's happened, and you're right. We haven't been fair to you. Can we come in? Just for a few minutes?" I studied them. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Sandra's smile never wavered, but there was something calculating in her expression. "You can say whatever you need to say from there," I replied. Sandra's smile tightened just slightly. "Margaret, I know we got off on the wrong foot. I was stressed about the wedding, about moving, about all the changes in my life. I took that stress out on you, and that was wrong. I'm sorry." The words were right, but the tone was all wrong. It was like listening to someone recite lines from a script they hadn't bothered to rehearse properly. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "So you'll cancel the eviction?" Sandra's eyes gleamed. "We can start fresh. I promise things will be different. We'll pay rent. We'll be respectful. We'll—" "No." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Sandra's smile vanished. "What do you mean, no? I just apologized." "You said words. You didn't mean them. And even if you did, you've shown me who you are, Sandra. You don't respect me. You don't respect my property. And you've turned my son against me. An apology doesn't undo months of disrespect." "You stubborn, bitter—" Sandra caught herself, and the fake smile returned. "Margaret, think about the baby, your grandchild. Don't you want to be part of their life? If you truly cared about the baby, you would have treated the child's grandmother with kindness from the beginning," I said. "You can't use my grandchild as a bargaining chip now." Michael finally spoke. "Mom, Sandra's trying. Can't you see that? We're trying to make this right." "Are you?" I looked at my son. "Michael, answer me honestly. If I let you stay, if I cancel this eviction, will Sandra really change? Will you go back to being my son, or will you continue being her puppet?" His face flushed. "She's not. I'm not. He loves me," Sandra cut in, her voice sharpening. "Something you apparently can't handle. You're jealous that Michael has someone else in his life now. You want to control him forever, keep him under your thumb like some pathetic mama's boy." There it was, the mask was slipping. "I want him to be happy," I said quietly. "But I won't be abused in my own home to make that happen." Sandra stepped closer to the door, her voice dropping to something uglier. "You're going to regret this. You think you can just throw us out? We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Your church, your friends, your book club. Everyone will know you're a cruel old woman who evicted her pregnant daughter-in-law. You'll die alone, Margaret. No family. No grandchildren. Just you and your precious house." "Are you finished?" I asked calmly, though my heart was pounding. "We could take you to court," Michael said desperately. "Sandra's lawyer friend says we might have a case for constructive eviction or elder abuse or—" "Elder abuse?" I almost laughed. "You want to claim I'm abusing myself by reclaiming my own property? Please do take me to court. I'd love to see a judge's reaction to that argument." Sandra's face had gone red. "You're making a huge mistake. We could make your life hell for the next 16 days. We could destroy this house before we leave. We could quote, threaten me one more time and I'm calling the police," I said firmly. "Every word you've said has been recorded by my security cameras, including that last bit. Do you really want to add criminal threats to your list of problems?" The realization hit Sandra's face like cold water. Her eyes darted to the small camera above my door. "You're recording us?" Michael looked shocked. "I'm recording everyone who comes to my property. It's perfectly legal, and it's been saving me a lot of headaches. For instance, I have footage of someone keying my car last week. Would you like me to share that with the police?" Sandra grabbed Michael's arm. "Let's go. We're wasting our time with this vindictive bitch." They turned to leave, but I called after them. 16 days. If you're not out, I file for eviction in court, and then you'll have an eviction on your record. That makes renting anywhere else very difficult. I suggest you start packing." Sandra whirled around, her face contorted with rage. "You'll never see your grandchild! Never! I'll make sure that baby doesn't even know your name." "That's your choice," I said, and I meant it. "But you'll make it from somewhere else. This is my home." I closed the door and locked it, then leaned against it, my legs shaking. Through the wood, I could hear Sandra screaming obscenities, hear Michael trying to calm her down. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from anger, from relief that I had seen through their manipulation, from satisfaction that I hadn't caved. They had shown me their true faces. Sandra wasn't sorry, she was desperate. And Michael had become exactly what Sandra accused me of fearing, completely under her control, willing to threaten and manipulate his own mother. 16 days. I could survive 16 more days. I had to. The 13th day, 3 days before their deadline, everything came to a head. I was in my kitchen making tea when I heard unusual sounds from upstairs. Not the normal footsteps or occasional furniture moving, but something else. Dragging sounds. Repeated impacts against walls. I checked my camera feed on my phone. The exterior cameras showed nothing unusual, but the sounds continued. Were they destroying the property in retaliation? I called Patricia immediately. "They're doing something up there. It sounds like they might be damaging the house. Can you see anything?" "No, but I can hear it. What should I do?" "Call the police for a property check. You have a right to inspect your own property, especially if you suspect damage. The police can escort you." 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. I explained the situation briefly. I was the homeowner. I had tenants upstairs who were being evicted, and I suspected they might be damaging the property. Officer Chen, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, nodded. "We can do a welfare and property check. Let's go talk to them." We climbed the exterior stairs to their entrance. Officer Chen knocked firmly. "Portland Police, please open the door." There was a long pause, then scrambling sounds, then Michael opened the door. He looked panicked. "Officers, what's going on?" "Ma'am here is concerned about possible property damage. She's the owner of this building, correct?" "Yes, but..." "Then she has a right to inspect her property. May we come in?" Michael looked back into the apartment, his face pale. "This isn't a good time. Sandra is resting and..." "We won't take long," Officer Chen said, but her tone made it clear it wasn't a request. Michael reluctantly stepped aside. What I saw made my blood boil. They had started dismantling my house from the inside. The built-in bookshelves I had installed were torn from the walls, leaving gaping holes and exposed wiring. The hardwood floors were gouged and scratched, as if they'd dragged furniture across them deliberately. The walls had fist-sized holes, and the ceiling fan had been ripped down, leaving wires dangling dangerously. "What have you done?" I whispered. Sandra emerged from the bedroom, her face defiant. "This is our apartment. We can do what we want with it." "This is my property," I said, my voice rising. "You've destroyed thousands of dollars worth of fixtures and finishes." "You destroyed our lives first," Sandra shot back. "You think you can just throw us out? We're making sure you pay for it." Officer Chen was taking notes. "Ma'am, this is criminal mischief. Tenants are not allowed to damage rental property in retaliation for eviction proceedings." "We're not tenants. We're family," Sandra's voice got shrill. "She's just a vindictive old woman who can't stand that her son chose me over her." "Actually," the second officer, Officer Martinez, said dryly, "according to the eviction notice, you're tenants who haven't paid rent in 6 months. That makes this pretty clear-cut property damage." "Michael, tell them." Sandra turned to my son. "Tell them how she changed the locks illegally, how she's harassing us, how she changed the locks to her own living area," Michael said quietly, not meeting anyone's eyes. "She didn't restrict our access to up here." Sandra stared at him, betrayed. "What are you doing? You're supposed to be on my side." "I am, but Sandra, we did this." He gestured at the destruction. "We did damage her property. I told you it was a bad idea, but you said—" "Shut up!" Sandra screamed. "Just shut up! You're such a weak, pathetic—" "Ma'am," Officer Chen said firmly, "I'm going to need you to calm down. Mrs. Thompson, do you want to press charges for criminal mischief?" I looked at the destruction, then at my son's face. He looked defeated, ashamed, like he'd finally woken up from a nightmare. "Yes," I said, "I do." Sandra's face went white. "You can't. You wouldn't. We're family." "You stopped being my family when you started destroying my property out of spite," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Officer, I also have security footage from last week showing one or both of them keying my car. I'd like to add that to the charges." "No!" Sandra lunged toward me, but Officer Martinez stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to calm down right now, or you'll be arrested for assault in addition to property damage." "This is all her fault!" Sandra was unraveling, her carefully constructed mask completely gone. "She's the one who started this. She wouldn't let us live our lives. She was always there, always judging, always—" "Always living in my own house?" I asked quietly. Officer Chen took control. "Mr. Thompson, Ms. Cooper." "Sandra Cooper," Michael said quietly. "We're not married yet." "Ms. Cooper, Mr. Thompson, you need to understand the situation you're in. You've damaged property that doesn't belong to you. You've admitted to it in front of police officers. Mrs. Thompson has grounds to press charges, and she also has grounds to seek immediate emergency eviction based on property destruction. You could be out tonight instead of in 3 days." Sandra started to cry, but they were angry tears. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were supposed to have a home. We were supposed to have a wedding. Now everything's ruined and it's all your fault." She pointed at me. "No," I said firmly. "It's your fault. You decided to treat me with contempt. You decided to manipulate my son. You decided to destroy my property when you didn't get your way. Every single problem you have right now, you created yourself." Michael finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw recognition in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. God, what have we done?" But it was too late for apologies. Far too late. The police report was filed within the hour. The photographs of the damage became official evidence. Patricia called me that evening with barely contained satisfaction in her voice. "Margaret, with this criminal mischief charge, we can file for immediate eviction. They'll be out within 48 hours. "Do it," I said without hesitation. The emergency eviction order was granted the next morning. When the sheriff's deputies arrived at my house that afternoon to serve it, I watched from my window as Sandra was escorted from the property. She was still crying, still screaming about how unfair it all was, how I was a monster, how I had ruined her life. Michael carried their boxes out in silence, his face blank. When the deputies weren't looking, he glanced at my window. Our eyes met for a moment. I saw regret there, and shame, and loss. I felt all of those things too, but I didn't look away. They had 3 hours to get their belongings out. The sheriff's deputies oversaw the entire process to prevent any further damage. Sandra tried one last time to appeal to me, pounding on my door and begging me to reconsider pressing charges. "Please, Margaret, I'm pregnant. Think about the baby. You can't do this to your own grandchild." I spoke through the locked door. "I didn't do this to you, Sandra. You did this to yourself. You have a court date for the criminal mischief charges. I suggest you hire a good lawyer. I'll tell everyone what you did. Every single person who knows you. I'll make sure they know you're a horrible, vindictive person." "Tell whoever you want," I said calmly. "I have documentation, witnesses and police reports. The truth will speak for itself. By 6 p.m., they were gone. The sheriff's deputy confirmed that they had removed all their belongings and handed me back the keys to their entrance. "Ma'am," the deputy said, "I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of evictions. Most of them are ugly. But I want you to know you handled this correctly. You followed the law, you documented everything, and you protected yourself. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for standing up for yourself." His words meant more than he probably knew. After they left, I walked upstairs to inspect the damage properly. It was worse than I'd thought. Beyond the destroyed bookshelves and damaged floors, they had also broken the bathroom mirror, torn down curtain rods, and even damaged the oven door. Things I hadn't noticed during the police inspection. The repair costs would be substantial, but I had documentation, and I would sue them in small claims court for every penny. That night, I slept in my house alone for the first time in 6 months. The silence was profound. No footsteps overhead. No muffled arguments. No tension crackling through the walls. Just peace. I made myself a proper dinner, something I hadn't done in weeks, and ate it at my kitchen table while reading a novel. Simple pleasures I had forgotten existed. The next morning, I began the process of reclaiming my space. I changed the locks on the upstairs unit. I walked through every room, opening windows, letting fresh air chase away the negative energy that had accumulated. I started making lists of repairs, calling contractors for estimates. 2 days later, on what would have been their wedding day, I received an email. It was from Michael. "Mom, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to say it anyway. You were right about everything. I was so caught up in Sandra, in trying to make her happy, that I lost myself. I lost you. I let her turn me into someone I don't recognize. We didn't get married yesterday. After we moved out, after the reality of what we'd done really hit, I started seeing things clearly. Sandra wanted me to lie to the police, to blame everything on you, to claim you'd abused us. When I refused, she showed me who she really is. She's not pregnant. She never was. She lied to manipulate both of us. I found the negative pregnancy test in her bag. When I confronted her, she didn't even seem sorry. She said it was strategic. I ended the relationship. I'm staying with a friend right now, trying to figure out who I am without her influence. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I said terrible things. I let her destroy your property. I chose her over you again and again. But I want you to know that I understand now what I lost. Not just a house. I lost my mother. I lost my integrity. I lost myself. I'll pay for the damages. I'll testify against her in court if needed, and I'll understand if you never want to see me again. I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything. Michael. I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to tell him to come home, that I forgave him. But I couldn't. Not yet. The revelation about the fake pregnancy hit me harder than I expected. She had weaponized the idea of my grandchild, used it as a tool to manipulate both of us. What kind of person does that? What kind of darkness lives in someone's heart that they would lie about something so sacred? I took a day to process everything before I responded. When I finally wrote back, I kept it brief. Michael, thank you for your honesty. I'm glad you're seeing things clearly now. I need time to heal from all of this. We can talk again in a few weeks. Mom, forgiveness would come with time, maybe. But trust? That would take much, much longer. I forwarded the email to Patricia. She responded within minutes. This is excellent evidence for your civil suit against Sandra. Save everything. I did. Because while Sandra might have lost Michael, she hadn't lost her malice, and I wanted to make sure she couldn't hurt anyone else the way she'd hurt my family. The court proceedings moved quickly. Sandra didn't even show up for her criminal mischief hearing, which resulted in a default judgment against her. She was convicted in absentia and ordered to pay full restitution for the property damage, $14,847.32 to be exact, plus court costs and my legal fees, which brought the total to just over $18,000. 3 weeks later, Sandra Cooper was convicted of criminal mischief and ordered to pay restitution for the property damage. She was also ordered to pay my legal fees. She never did. She disappeared, moving out of state before the payment order could be enforced. But I had won. I had my home back. I had my dignity back. And slowly, carefully, I was beginning to rebuild a relationship with my son. On my terms this time. The day the judgment was finalized, I stood in my upstairs unit, still damaged but mine, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not arrogance, but genuine pride in myself. I had stood up to people who tried to take everything from me, and I had won. Not through manipulation or cruelty, but through law, documentation, and sheer determination. I was 63 years old, and I had just learned that I was stronger than I ever knew. 6 months after the eviction, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The house repairs took 3 months and cost nearly $15,000. I hired the best contractors I could find, and the upstairs unit was now restored and improved. New hardwood floors, modern fixtures, freshly painted walls. It looked better than it ever had. I decided not to rent it out again. Instead, I converted it into a combination guest suite and creative studio. The main room became my art space. I had always wanted to try painting, and now I had both the space and the motivation. The bedroom became a cozy guest room for my book club friends when they stayed late, or for the occasional out-of-town visitor. My life became fuller than it had been in years. Without the stress of Sandra's presence and Michael's tension, I rediscovered myself. I joined a watercolor class at the community center. I volunteered more at the local library. I traveled, something I'd always put off. A week in San Francisco, a weekend in Seattle, a beautiful autumn trip to the Columbia River Gorge. I was happy, truly, genuinely happy. Michael and I were slowly, carefully rebuilding our relationship. He came to visit once a month, always calling first, always respectful of my space and my boundaries. He was seeing a therapist to work through everything that had happened. I think I was depressed after Dad died, and I never dealt with it, he told me during one visit. Sandra took advantage of that. She isolated me from you, from my friends, from everyone who might have helped me see what she was doing. You're seeing it now, I said. That's what matters. He was working 2 jobs to pay back the money he owed me for his share of the damages. I had told him it wasn't necessary. I had won a judgment against Sandra, but he insisted. I need to make this right, he said. For me, not just for you. I was proud of him for that. It was the first real sign that my son was coming back to me. As for Sandra, her life had spiraled in ways I learned about only through the grapevine. She had moved to Arizona and tried to start over, but her criminal record followed her. She couldn't find decent housing with an eviction and criminal mischief conviction on her record. According to mutual acquaintances, she was bouncing between short-term rentals and friends' couches. She had tried to reconcile with Michael 3 times, showing up at his workplace, calling him constantly, even threatening suicide when he refused to see her. He had gotten a restraining order. The fake pregnancy lie had gotten out. Michael had told his friends what happened, and in a small community like Portland, word spreads. Sandra's reputation was destroyed. People knew she was manipulative, knew she had lied, knew she had destroyed property out of spite. She tried to restart her life under her maiden name in Phoenix, but even there, her past caught up with her. I heard through Patricia that Sandra had been fired from 2 jobs in 4 months when background checks revealed her criminal history. I didn't take pleasure in her suffering. I'm not that kind of person. But I did feel a sense of justice. She had tried to destroy my life, my home, my relationship with my son. She had threatened me, manipulated me, and damaged my property. Now she was facing the natural consequences of her choices. Some people might say I should feel guilty, that I should have been more forgiving, more understanding. But those people hadn't lived through what I lived through. They hadn't been made to feel like an intruder in their own home. They hadn't been disinvited from their son's wedding. They hadn't watched someone deliberately destroy their property out of spite. I had every right to protect myself, and I had done so legally and appropriately. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My book club friends threw me an independence party to celebrate my reclaimed home. Patricia and I grew even closer. She was now not just my lawyer, but one of my dearest friends. I even started dating again, going to a few dinners with a widower named Richard, who attended my church. Nothing serious yet, but it was nice to feel attractive and interesting to someone again. My art was improving. I had even sold 3 paintings at a local gallery show, small landscapes of Oregon forests that people seemed to connect with. One evening, as I sat in my beautifully restored home, drinking tea and watching the sunset through my picture window, I realized something profound. I was genuinely at peace. Not just happy, but content. Complete. I had faced my worst fear, losing my son, and I had survived. More than survived. I had flourished. And Michael? He was finding his way back. Slowly, but surely. That was enough. So what did I learn from this nightmare? I learned that family doesn't give anyone the right to disrespect you. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't cruel, even when others call it that. I learned that legal documentation and preparation aren't paranoia, they're wisdom. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. My home is mine, my dignity is mine, and I will never apologize for protecting either. What would you do if your own child turned against you? Would you stand your ground, or would you surrender? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between family and self-respect? Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Make sure you're teaching them well. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share. You never know who might need to hear it. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.